Welcome back, everybody. We have made it to episode 65, but as you can tell, my organics processing setup is not long for this world. It is very clearly broken. I am not making any nutrients at this point. Things are clogged or things are not working as they should, despite the fact that I have a decent supply of the Yumiko plants. I have 1.1 thousand of them in my inventory, but it's just not working to make the nutrients for one reason or another. So those are things that I'm going to have to fix today as the number one priority, because I really don't anticipate that I can continue to advance on the planet until this is fixed. To add to that, at the end of last episode, we did get a little bit of a build ready to go for the copper and iron bacteria farming or whatever this is. But we can't use this yet because these stations also require nutrients, which again, I do not have. So this will be priority number one. How I'm going to be fixing this, though, is where I'm kind of getting stuck. As I see it, I have a couple different options. I could maybe use bots. I could maybe use some very complicated belts with more smarts on them, kind of like I was beginning to do here with the inserters and reading the belts and things like that. Another option, we could maybe add to the belts, but have it go in a looping fashion. I kind of like this, but that would require maybe expanding on with adding more bus type elements, like different loops, different adding ins of different splitters and things like that. Or third option, which I would like to try, would actually be using an element that I used on Fulgora, where I want to see if we can use like a shared cargo wagon, kind of like, let's see if I can build that here. If we imagine it like this, we'd basically try to combine as many of the biochambers surrounding that as possible to either input or take out these shared materials, because we could theoretically fit a bunch more machines around this than we could like just one box or a smaller unit that has not as much inventory space. So I want to try this technique first, and then if this technique doesn't prove successful, I can maybe incorporate doing the looping system but making it a little bit more sophisticated, or worst case scenario, resort to bots. So let's start with the cargo wagon technique first. My plan is to just begin to kind of build stuff and then see what sticks. I'm just going to throw everything at it, experiment with it. And to be honest, I don't know that I will be able to do much of a commentary while I'm building this, because I am going to be trying to be creative and thinking and doing things all at the same time. So please enjoy this short little montage. more hours than I would care to admit later, and this is the last of the circle that you saw for the organics processing, but there have been many iterations since. So let's start with iteration number 1, which is this setup over here. I used inspiration from Fulgora, as you might remember, where I used cargo wagons basically as a very large chest that you could either pull from or pull into for the ingredients. There were a couple issues with this though. First of all, I tried to prevent spoilage or excess spoilage by putting some stack size limitations on the inserters, but that meant it was slowing my production down, which meant this little setup here really couldn't keep with any large goals, and this wouldn't feed all of the recipes that I needed for the organics, so this is basically as far as I could fit around these 2 cargo wagons. So I decided I needed to go bigger. So from there, this was the bigger setup. I also used cargo wagons here, but I was able to fit more biochambers around, in this case, 3 different cargo wagons. I did fit in some inserters with special filters on them to try to filter from the beginning cargo wagons into the cargo wagons kind of down the chain. But I still ended up with the same issue of basically bottlenecks with the inserters where, because again, I was still trying to prevent excess spoilage, I had put stack size limitations on them, so it was just really too slow in order to keep up with my production goals. At least with this setup, I was able to get more production, or at least more of the recipes up and running. So I got bioflux, jelly nut, carbon. I even delved into the bacteria processing here, sulfur, even a little science biochamber and the pentapod processing, plastic, lubricant here. But I decided, even though this system did work, and it did work for a little while, it just was not a really feasible option for any realistic science per minute goal that I might have later down the line. That leads me into the last iteration. And you can tell this is a lot more complicated, a lot bigger, and it works. So let me just kind of summarize this real quick. You'll notice that we have basically 2 looping systems. We've got an outer loop and an inner loop. The outer loop is what feeds basically the spoilage and nutrients, which are the main ingredients I've learned that go into the organic recipes, into the nearby biochambers. Then the biochambers output their products, or like the intermediary products, onto the inner loop here. These are going to be products like jelly, bioflux, more nutrients as well, some spoilage, pentapod eggs, the Yumiko mash, and then we have more of the advanced products like plastic and then even rocket fuel that go onto the outermost line here. And currently this is kind of where they end. They don't feed into anything yet because this is as far as I've gotten. But now that I've explained kind of what feeds the inner and outer loops, let's talk about how it starts. It basically starts with this machine here, which is really what kickstarts everything. If this were to break, everything could in theory break, but this is what prevents the whole circle from breaking. And that's because I've learned that even though spoilage goes into nutrient production, as is this biochamber here, if we run out of nutrients, this machine breaks, even though it makes nutrients. The way to fix that is by this assembler here, which makes nutrients, but it does not require nutrients itself as part of the recipe. So even if this breaks, this can jumpstart the machine again. So long story short, we have spoilage that feeds from the bots into this box here. Spoilage goes into this machine, which would jumpstart this, that then jumpstarts the rest of the loop as well. You'll notice that I have tons of conditions on the belts as well as the inserters throughout the entire factory here. In this case, because I don't want to rely on this machine for all of my nutrient production, I only have this machine working if there's a certain amount or less being read on the belts here. And I'm reading the belts by doing the read belt contents and then hold all belts, which basically reads all of the belts behind this setup here. I do have some nutrients getting fed onto the inner lines here because some machines further up the chain do require it, more so than I was getting produced further down the line. So nutrients will go here, and then any spoilage from the nutrients will feed back onto the outer line again here. This is where I have a box where the Yumiko ends up getting fed into the box and then into the Yumiko mash production. I also have conditions on here as well, and we have belts reading the contents as well. And then I also was trying to be smart with how I have the products getting distributed into the belts here, because obviously there's only so much room on the belts for products to go onto. So I have them staggered a little bit. So we have belts that enable or disable if a certain condition is met, that feed onto the outer of the inner lines here. But you'll notice that this one, for example, the jelly, gets fed onto the inner of the inner lines here. So that way we're getting some sort of density distribution, so they're not all going onto the same line, all in the same area here. So that's helped a little bit. After we get the Yumiko mash production, we end up getting more nutrient production, and then the bioflux. Again, all of these have different circuit condition or requirements on them. Then we have the bioflux going into nutrient production, since this is the basically quickest way to get the nutrients. And then we have sulfur production here. The sulfur ends up feeding onto the inner lines here. Then, because I was adding in all of the recipes going into the Gleba loop anyway, I added in biochamber production as well as the science packs as well. So currently, science packs go onto this extra line here, and these would eventually go on to some labs if I had them. Again, they're on this line. They only work if there's less than 20 on the line at the moment. They are reading this line here. They are currently spoilage because I don't have any where for the labs to go, but because the science packs do require pentapod eggs, and I don't want basically spawning of the pentapod creatures if the eggs were to spoil, I have all of the eggs that don't go into the science pack production getting filtered off at this point here with a splitter, and then the eggs go into this heating tower over here. I also have excess spoilage going into this heating tower, as well as carbon production with these biochambers over here as well. Past the carbon production, I have the bacteria production going into iron ore and copper ore. I don't think I've got enough of these at the moment. And then from here, the copper or iron bacteria goes into more bacteria cultivation over here. I still think I need to add more to this as well, but I do still have more room, so I can add more of these in the middle section over here as needed, and then I will eventually continue these lines along to some sort of furnace setup. Just past this bacteria section is where I have the plastic production. Why are these not really getting output anywhere? Let's see. Where's the output for plastic? Do I not have the line? I don't think I have outputs for the plastic. Whoops. So I think I'm missing inserters for the plastic. There we go. There we go. Oh, except for I probably need to switch this up. This is why I don't do it live sometimes. So, plastic needs to go on the other side of what is getting shared with rocket fuel. So we could do that probably by... will this work if we do it like this? Let's see. Let's put in a filter. That becomes plastic. And then I think spoilage, which I do have some on me, should still fit into that, right? I'm not sure. Let's see. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge later. Whoops. Okay. So let me copy this to all of those. Whoops. Okay. Now we'll join that back up with the rocket fuel line. So that was the goal, to basically have rocket fuel and plastic sharing this line here. And then we'll get the plastic filtered off here. The rocket fuel, of course, is filtered off there, and we'll have those feed into other factories later on. So just past the plastic line, we have the pentapod egg production. This is largely stalled for now, and that's because I don't have any use for the labs at the moment. So I felt there's no point in really getting the pentapod eggs getting produced and then running into maybe a mishap of too many egg buildup and then, destroying the whole factory when they spawn their creatures. So once I'm ready to turn this portion on, I'll go manually farm some of the pentapod eggs and then get this running. But for now, it is paused. But I am trying to have a setup here where the output egg, which needs to feed back into itself, will go into this box here. And then any excess beyond the one will get fed onto the inner loop here and down into the labs. Just below the pentapod egg production, we've got the rocket fuel production here that feeds onto this line along with the plastic now. Below that, we have the jelly going into lubricant production and then into the jelly nut itself to complete the loop. So that is where we have it. We also have seeds getting output for the Yumiko processing and the jelly nut processing. And then the seeds get put into an active provider box over here. They don't continue along the inner belts. And then the bots take the seeds into the Yumiko farming and the jelly farming, or the jelly nut seed farming over here as well. So I need to add onto the farming or agricultural setups for both of these areas, and I definitely don't know the proper ratios, but this is all I have for now. It's working kind of for now, so that's where I'm leaving it for now until I play with it more. Are there things I can do to improve upon this? Absolutely. Some of these don't have the correct ratios or conditions on them. I think one of these things is reading multiple belt lines that I don't want read or something like that. So I'm going to play with those things, the conditions and the fine-tuning a little bit off camera. But I am pleased with this. It took a lot of effort, more so than any of the other planets probably combined. But I think this will set me up for at least being able to get off the planet and get some sort of production for science packs later on. So with that said, I think with this demonstration, we're going to end today's episode here. We got, I think, the hardest part on this planet now done. Now we just have to do the fine-tuning and start doing some of the more mundane things like building a bus for next episode and getting more production, and then figuring out, now that we can have science pack production, what do we do with it? Do I have to now get production of all of the other labs, or are we going to attempt to get it into orbit and then back to Navis for use? Those are all big questions that we will figure out later. So I hope you guys will continue to stick around, and I'll see you soon.